Today we're taking a pit stop to rural America for a little bit of presidential history. Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. Today we are in Plains, Georgia, and we're going to take in a little bit of history, especially presidential history, because Plains, Georgia was the birthplace and longtime home of President Jimmy Carter, our 39th president. He was born here, he grew up here, he was married here, and he came back here after his presidency, and he actually passed away here in his longtime home. Now today we're going to go and check out a lot of the Jimmy Carter sites. We were here about 2 years ago, but I didn't get a chance to show you everything I wanted to show you. But we're going to check out a lot of things President Carter related and just some really cool southern things here. So let's go take a look. Now you absolutely cannot visit Plains without thinking of the two things that made Plains famous, and that would be peanuts and Jimmy Carter. And this is a statue that welcomes you into town that proudly celebrates both of them. This is quite the art piece. It says the Smiling Peanut, 1976. This 13-foot tall peanut was brought to Plains after a 1976 Carter presidential rally in Evansville, Indiana. It's made of polyurethane foam sprayed over a series of metal hoops covered with chicken wire. Maxine Reese accepted the peanut for the Plains Historical Preservation Trust in 1976. After the 1976 presidential election, the Smiling Peanut was moved from the Plains campaign headquarters to this location. It has been named as one of the top 50 roadside attractions in America. Plains Historical Preservation Trust Historical Marker Project 2022. That is pretty awesome. Now just over here I'm going to show you what I can of the Carters' home. Now this is the only home that the Carters ever owned. They lived in this house for about 60 years. And they lived in this home up until the day that they died. They both passed away inside this house. Now they did have Secret Service protection up until their final days, but I'll show you what I can of the house. It will eventually be open as well as their grave sites, but this was the home that Jimmy Carter and Rosalynn shared. This was the Secret Service guardhouse at the front. And this right here is the main driveway to the house. There are still yard crews here, but if I zoom in back here, you can see cameras all over the place in there. And this place was very well guarded by the United States Secret Service at all times. But the home that they actually lived in is at the end of this driveway, a little past where you see those cars. All the rest of this was their property. But like I said, this is the home that they passed away in, and there's a pond straight back that way where they're laid to rest. Now it will be open at some point. The Park Service people I talked to said it could be up to 3 or 4 years. They said it could be up to 3 or 4 years until it's open to the public. But this is, as of right now, this is as close as you can get to the house. But there is a spot right up here where you can kind of pull off the sidewalk and get a look at the property right here. Now they had a really nice area here, a lot of green grass. And they had a big pond back there. They have a walking track. I believe they have a swimming pool. Everything that they could have possibly wanted, they had here on this property. Now they used to walk all around this. And up until about COVID time, you could still see Jimmy or Rosalynn walking. They used to walk down this sidewalk or bike into the downtown area, which is about a half mile this way, but people used to see them in town all the time. Here's a picture of them on the doorstep. And this is what the house looks like back there. And here is a map of the property. See, right now we're right here. This is the road. That's where the guard shack is. If you follow this down, this is where the home is. They have a swimming pool right back here. This is a jogging path. They have a tennis court, and the pond is over here. Now the actual grave site, it said that it was by the pond, so that would be somewhere right over here. Woodland Drive, that was the driveway, so yeah, it'd be right straight out here on the other side of those trees. So that's where the actual grave site is of President Carter and Mrs. Carter. Now this behind me is Maranatha Baptist Church, and this was the home church of President and Mrs. Carter for a long, long time. And Jimmy Carter actually taught Sunday school here in this church for quite a few years. And if you're new to my channel, I did a video several years back about when I attended his Sunday school lesson in 2015. And it was quite an experience. I'll link that video to this one. But not only is this the church that Jimmy and Rosalynn Carter attended regularly, but this is also where the funerals were held for both of them, the final funerals at least. But this was the last stop before they were both laid to rest, obviously at different times on the grounds of their family home. So we'll check that out also. If you would have went to President Carter's Sunday school lesson, they would have lined you up on this sidewalk right here. And also, if you saw any of the funeral coverage, you could see the families lining up here, and the hearse was actually right over here. Pretty sad day in American history. I mean, not only was he a president, but he was probably one of the most beloved people after his presidency. He wrote over 20 books. His work with Habitat for Humanity, his work with the Carter Center, working on eradicating guinea worm. He did a lot of stuff. But this is the entrance to the church. Now, back when you would go to the Sunday school, there would be Secret Service agents on either side of this that would search you before you would go into the church, as it would happen for any former U.S. president. But, just kind of a fascinating look at a little bit of the personal lives of a president and first lady. Now this behind me right here is the Plains High School, and it was here that Jimmy Carter and Rosalynn Carter went to school. Now this school was built in 1921, I believe, and Jimmy Carter graduated here in 1941. Rosalynn graduated here in 1944. Now this is one of the times in Jimmy Carter's life when he started realizing the value of education, which he carried with him through his political career. But this place, no doubt, had a big impact on the life and, just the path that Jimmy Carter would take. It's kind of interesting just walking around here and knowing that this is, these are the grounds where, at the time, a future U.S. president would walk, and, it just kind of makes you wonder what went through his mind back then. Did he know that he would become leader of one of the most powerful countries in the world? It's pretty interesting to think about. Well, this place is taken care of by the National Park Service now. I'm not sure if we can get in yet, but we're going to see. Sometimes it's open, sometimes it's not. But this is a look at it from the back. It's always interesting to take a look at places like this, and I love that they preserve history. The National Park Service really does a phenomenal job with what they do. Just a really peaceful day. And if you've never been to Plains, Georgia, it may not be on your radar, but it really should be. There are a lot of Jimmy Carter sites, and if for no other reason, because it's just a beautiful southern town, and the people here are the friendliest that I've ever seen anywhere. You know, going back 10 years, I was here for 2 or 3 days, and everybody wants to know who you are. They want to get to know you. They ask you your name, and they remember your name. When they see you around town, they'll address you and say, "Hey, Mr. Jeff." You know, the formality is really interesting, not something I'm used to from growing up, up north, but it is a very nice thing. Here's a sign, a legacy of education. It says, as my high school teacher, Miss Julia Coleman, used to say, we must adjust to changing times and still hold to up-changing principles. This place was built for $50,000. This is the Plains High School. There it is. Plains High School graduating class of 1941. Jimmy Carter, far right, front row. There he is. Here's the front of the school right here. Now, this wasn't a very big town, and it still isn't. But it's really cool to be able to see this. Now we'll take a little look inside the school. See what things look like in here. Here's Jimmy Carter's Grammy Best Spoken Word Album 2018, Faith, A Journey for All. That's awesome. These would have been the halls he walked down as a student. A couple of exhibits in here. There they are riding the bike. There's so many sights to see and do here. This is Jimmy Carter's draft card. Here's some items from the Carter's farmhouse. This is the simple desk that Jimmy Carter used in the train depot when he was running for president. This was his headquarters desk. Here's Jimmy Carter's fly fishing pole. And even a replica of the Resolute desk. Here's a look at what one of the classrooms would have looked like. Look at these tiny desks. Picture of George Washington up there. Here's the auditorium.
It's home now. I mean, we go a lot of places and do a lot of things. We always come home.
I think Plains has given us an element of security and a place to heal our wounds when we're disappointed. A place to relish our accomplishments when they came, an element of stability in our life during turbulent times, and we've never been disappointed with Plains.
Just behind me now is an old railroad depot here in Plains, and it had a very unique purpose because this was Jimmy Carter's actual presidential campaign headquarters. Now you might ask yourself, why did they make a train depot into a presidential headquarters? The answer was real simple, and there's one answer. That answer was this was the only building available that had a working bathroom. Here's a little bit better look at it. And if you ever come to visit, this is almost always open. So you can come in and check it out and see what things looked like back when they had this as a campaign headquarters. Now the interesting thing is it wasn't very flashy then, and it's not very flashy now, but it is history. The president from Plains. Here's some of the campaign buttons. Now I told you the reason they picked this place is because of the working bathroom. This is that working bathroom, although it doesn't work anymore. It did at the time, and it also tells you right here. Behind this door is the reason this building was chosen as Carter's campaign headquarters. The depot was the only available building in Plains with a bathroom. Now imagine trying to run a campaign for President of the United States from a train depot. And this is the depot right here. Right up the stairs we go. Now as you can see, this is not a very big area. This place would have been filled with volunteers, campaign people, family, friends of Jimmy Carter. So welcome to Plains sign up there. Plains, obviously known for peanuts and Jimmy Carter. See a banner up there, welcome home Jimmy. Because he could have lived anywhere after his presidency, but he chose to come back to here. He chose to come back here to Plains. Join us for a visit with Jimmy, November 8th, 4:30 to 6:30. They have a TV down here. Pretty incredible that the history that this place holds. Head out here so you can kind of get a feel for this. There would have been a little bit more outside space here. But Plains, very friendly town, very small town, but really wasn't even on the map until Jimmy Carter made a name for himself here. Now all throughout town, this is part of it, but this is the Rosalynn Carter Butterfly Trail. She used to spend a pretty good amount of time out here. Loved the outdoors, nature, obviously butterflies. But this is the downtown area. It's pretty much one city block and just one side of the road. And just over here I'll show you, but they have a sign that's been up for a lot of years that says home of Jimmy Carter, our 39th president. Oh. They have quite a few chairs over here along the Butterfly Trail that you can stop and check things out. But just over here, if you've ever done research on Plains or watched any of the news coverage of any of the stuff that's happened here, you've probably seen this sign, very prominent in the downtown area. Over here's the old Carter's Warehouse. It's now an ice cream shop. They have famous peanut butter ice cream that is really, really good. There's Jimmy shoveling peanuts. And if you ever need a good photo op, I went nuts in Plains. Now there are some historical plaques here. The old Carter Peanut Warehouse. It said it was built in 1903 and intended as a hotel. The building housed retail services on the ground floor and the 20-bed Wise Sanitarium on the top floor. The Wise brothers used this location until the 1920s when they moved to the newly completed hospital located on Hospital Street behind Plains High School. Now that's actually the hospital where Jimmy Carter was born. In 1934, Earl Carter owned and operated a peanut business and the Earl Carter Insurance Agency from this location. Earl Carter ran the business until his death in 1953. Jimmy Carter returned home from the Navy to run the peanut warehouse at this location until 1961 from this building. President Carter launched his senatorial and gubernatorial campaigns from this building. The Plains Trading Post. I highly recommend a visit in here. They do have signed books from President Carter and tons of campaign buttons. Buffalo Cafe at the old bank. Here's a little alleyway. Kind of give you the full feel of what it's like to walk down these streets. It says this was the old bank building. Plains Bank was organized in 1901 by R.S. Oliver, who served as president, W.L. Thomas vice president, and C.C. Lunsford as cashier. The Plains Bank belonged to a chain of 83 banks operated by Bankers Trust Company of Atlanta. The bank closed in the summer of 1926. After the bank closed, the building remained empty for several years. Jimmy Carter and his cousin Hugh Carter, as young boys, sold hot dogs, hamburgers, and ice cream here on Saturdays. Later in the 1930s, the post office was located here and served in this capacity until 1963. About this time, Hugh Carter began to use the building as the office for his worm farm. Worm farm, I keep thinking of National Lampoon's Vacation. After Hugh's death in 1999, it closed and remained unused until 2002. The Better Hometown program of Plains acquired the building and renovated it, naming it the Old Bank Cafe. Here's the historic Plains Inn and Antique Mall. I'm actually staying at the Plains Inn tonight. Really nice place. They have one room for each decade Jimmy Carter was alive. And if you watched a bunch of Jimmy Carter interviews from the last 15 years of his life, most of them took place. You'll notice a brick background. Most of those interviews took place in rooms in this Plains Historic Inn. And back when they had the peanut festivals and all those kinds of things, Jimmy Carter would speak to the crowd from this balcony. In there they have several, or at least they had last time I was here, they had several personal photo albums from Jimmy and Rosalynn Carter that people could flip through. It's a very interesting place to stay, and the Antique Mall is pretty good too. The plaque says originally the Oliver McDonald store. This building came into existence around 1901. A two-story section was later added to house a furniture store and a funeral home managed by Ross Dean. In 1934, two of the buildings were sold to Alton Carter for his established Plains Mercantile Company and Plains Mercantile Bank. The hand-drawn elevator was installed for the moving of furniture and caskets to the upstairs area. In 1971, the building housed Hugh Carter's Antiques, and the building came into his present use in 2002 when it became the Plains Inn and Antique Mall. Thank you, Jimmy Carter. We love you. They must have put these out around the time of his funeral. This is the Friends of Jimmy Carter building. Welcome to Plains, home of the 39th president. They have a Mr. Peanut there in the window. There I am. Hi! On the corner here, the old Plains Pharmacy. And the mural over here, let me zoom in on that there. It has the presidential seal, the Plains Peanut Festival, and then over here on the top, let's see if I can, Plains High School. That over there is Billy Carter's service station, which we're going to go to next. Jimmy Carter Boyhood Home. Jimmy Carter National Historic Site, the Maranatha Baptist Church, and the Plains Depot. Now this is a little blast from the past for me. This right here is the Plains Convention Center. This is where they have a lot of functions here. Now back in 2015, not the last time I was here, but the first time I came to town, it was for a Plains presidential auction, and it was a fundraiser for the community. And Jimmy Carter was here in attendance. Rosalynn Carter was here in attendance. And there were several family members of the Carters that were hanging out here. And I met a couple of them, and they actually gave me a personal introduction to the President and Mrs. Carter just inside the community center here. And here we have Billy Carter's service station. I need to wait for traffic to go by so I can tell you a little bit more. Billy Carter was the brother of Jimmy Carter. He was a little rougher around the edges. Many of you might remember his famous Billy beer. He said he drank a lot of beer and none of it was as good as his Billy beer. Here's some of the old gas pumps. Got an old Coke machine here. And then Please Place empties here. And it takes you back a little bit. Now this is the service station. You can kind of see a little in there. Let's stick the camera in there. That's the inside. I'm not sure if it's open. Yeah. Welcome to Billy Carter's service station. Billy Carter passed away in 1988. He ran this thing for a while, 72 to 81. There's a belt buckle. President Jimmy Carter, Billy's brother. This certifies that Billy Carter has appeared on stage at the world-famous Grand Ole Opry. Some various things. Billy Carter, he had quite a personality, a little bit out there. Boy, get a load of those. The guy had style. Guessing that would have been his office in there. Bathrooms. Here's a mock-up of what the service station would have looked like in 1981. Pretty much the same as now, just an awning out, above the gas pumps. Lots of interesting stuff in here. Looks like there's some official correspondence. The media love this guy. There's a couple of covers of him on Newsweek. Money Magazine, Time Magazine. There's a sign in there. It probably came from his desk. And a bust. There's a couple cans of his Billy beer. To Billy Carter, the big peanut up there. Pretty cool stuff. A button for Billy Beer Day. It's pretty cool. Now we are just across town. This is Lebanon Cemetery. Now this is on the grounds of what used to be a church. I believe the church was built here back in 1848, and it slowly became a cemetery. Now that's all that exists here. But over here is a family plot of the Carters. Now originally this could have been the final resting place of where Jimmy and Rosalynn could have been laid to rest. They ended up not being here, but this is one of two Carter family plots here, but this is the direct family of President Carter. Let me try to zoom in on this the best I can. This is Jimmy Carter's father. This is James Earl Carter, 1894 to 1953. It's kind of sad that he didn't live long enough to see his son as Georgia governor, definitely not as president, and didn't get to see a lot of the good things that he did in life. You know, he authored over 20 books, but it seems like his father was a pretty good influence. He was a hard worker, worked on the peanut farm. Sounded like he had a pretty good business head on him. And over here was his mother, Lillian Gordy Carter, 1898 to 1983. She lived a nice long life, played a big part in President Carter's presidential campaign. Very tight-knit family. So these are the parents of Jimmy Carter. Now there is an empty plot here, which could have been where Jimmy Carter maybe considered being laid to rest. But right here is his brother, Billy Carter, 1937 to 1988. Lived a pretty short life. Really interesting guy, though. But this is Lebanon Cemetery at the Carter family plot. Here's one more look at the downtown area. And this is from the balcony at the historic Plains Inn. Now, if you've ever seen video of the Plains Peanut Festival, Jimmy Carter used to stand right here on this balcony to talk to the crowd underneath. This was one of the places that he did spend a good amount of time. He gave a lot of interviews inside and things like that. But I am going to cover this hotel and some other things in it in a different video, because there's some really interesting stuff that I have kind of special access to today. But that's all there is for this video. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you learned a little something, and we'll catch you on the next video. Take care, everybody.